The first time I saw their ship, it didn't look like a threat. That's what keeps replaying in my head. Not the moment everything went wrong. Not the screams or the lockouts or the way the corridor lights stuttered like they were trying to blink something away. Just that first clean image. A dull grey silhouette sliding out of the starfield, keeping a respectful distance, matching our velocity as if it had been travelling alongside us the whole time. We were 3 weeks out from the inner systems, deep enough into the transit lane that you stop thinking of home as a place and start thinking of it as a rumour. The outer colonies were ahead. The Empire's clean maps called them resources and settlements. My shipmates called them edges. I called them work. I'm Lieutenant Moraine Voss, Ship Security, Imperial Transport Meridian. I've written that title so many times in log headers that it stopped feeling like it belonged to a person. Just letters that meant I was responsible for keeping 2,000 civilians and 46 crew alive long enough to be handed off at the next port. The Meridian wasn't a warship. She was a long-haul transport with the weapons of a cautious merchant and the mass of a floating city. Her hull held prefabricated colony modules, agricultural stacks, medical printers, and 1,000 sealed containers labeled with barcodes none of us were cleared to interpret. Families slept in rotation pods. Engineers lived with grease under their nails. The bridge crew lived with caffeine in their veins. We were boring, which is the closest thing to safe you can buy in deep space. When the contact alarm sounded, it cut through that boredom like a blade. Unscheduled approach, the sensor officer called. Bearing 064 relative. Range, closing. Captain Soren's voice stayed calm, but I saw the way his fingers tightened on the armrest. Identity? Transponder is broadcasting, the officer said. Sir. Merchant registry, outer trade route. Origin listed as Virex 9. Virex 9. Even before the display magnified, I felt my stomach go faintly cold. I'd never been there, but I'd heard enough. A supply world on paper, a salvager's paradise in practice. The kind of place where ships were repaired with whatever was available, and a ship's history could be scrubbed clean for the right price. The image sharpened. A compact freighter with a wide belly and asymmetrical engine pods. It wasn't an Imperial design, but it wasn't alien either. It looked like a dozen civilian hulls welded into something that still flew because it hadn't realized it was supposed to die. Open a channel, Captain Soren said. The comm officer complied. A moment of static, then a face filled the main display. Human, male, early 40s maybe, dark hair cropped short, clean-shaven, eyes the color of polished stone. His uniform was merchant grade, but too neat, like it had been pressed for a portrait. He smiled, slow and careful, as if he'd practiced it. Imperial Transport Meridian, he said. This is merchant vessel Larkspur, registry V904771. We request communication and assistance. His voice was clear, no distortion, no strain. That alone was odd. Comms in transit lanes always carried a little noise, like the universe insisting on reminding you how far apart everything was. His signal sounded like he was standing in our bridge. Captain Soren leaned forward. State your status, Larkspur. Drive instability, the man said. His eyes didn't blink. We are experiencing fluctuation in primary field containment. We can maintain course for a short duration. We request escort vector correction and supply exchange. The comm officer mouthed the words silently as they came, like he was reading along with a script. Captain Soren glanced at me. Security protocols ran through my head like a checklist I could recite in my sleep. Unknown ship, unscheduled approach, request to dock, potential piracy, potential sabotage. The transport lane was policed, but not constantly. A warship wouldn't waste fuel babysitting every freighter with a sob story. I asked the question I always asked first. Any weapons signatures? Nothing heavy, the sensor officer said. Minimal point defense, standard merchant loadout, no active locks. I watched the man's face on the screen, still smiling, still not blinking. Send our medical and engineering questionnaires, I said. Standard contact protocol. Ask for crew manifest, cargo list, and last port verification. Captain Soren nodded. Larkspur, we'll review your request. Hold position and transmit documentation. Understood, the man said. We are grateful. The channel closed. The bridge exhaled collectively, like we'd all been holding our breath without noticing. Captain Soren turned to me. Lieutenant, thoughts? My thoughts are that we don't let anyone dock without vetting, I said. We can escort at range and provide remote diagnostics. If they're legitimate, fine. If they're not, we stay alive. He agreed, which was comforting. But comfort is a thin blanket in deep space. Over the next hour, the Larkspur transmitted everything we requested. The manifest listed 12 crew. Cargo, processed protein, oxygen canisters, machine components, and sealed medical supplies bound for an outpost on the rim. Last port, Virex 9. The paperwork was clean. Too clean. Our system flagged their merchant registry as valid. Their ship profile matched known designs. Their drive fluctuation readings, transmitted as telemetry, looked genuine. Engineering confirmed that, yes, their containment field was unstable and could fail if they pushed too hard. It should have been a simple decision. But I kept seeing that smile. It wasn't smug. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't any of the things a real captain would wear when asking an Imperial transport for help. It looked like a mask somebody had learned to shape. Let me run deeper scans, I told Captain Soren. You think they're pirates? He asked. I think pirates are loud, I said. This is quiet. He gave me a long look, then nodded. Do it. I routed the ship's security suite through the Meridian's primary sensor array and pulled everything I could. Thermal, electromagnetic, microgravity distortions, hull stress mapping. The Larkspur's interior layout emerged as a ghost image, blocks of heat moving through corridors, clustering in the main compartments. 12 heat signatures, human-sized, regular heart rate patterns, normal. Then I noticed something I couldn't explain. They moved in pairs, always, never one alone. I zoomed in. The patterns weren't frantic or fearful. They were deliberate, like a dance rehearsal. The pairs would stop at junctions at the same time, turn at the same time, continue at the same time. I told myself it was a cultural quirk, a discipline thing. Virex 9 had its own habits, but my skin prickled anyway. Bridge to medical, I said over internal comm. Dr. Holden, I want you on standby. If we allow any exchange, I want neurological scans. Not just blood work. Anything unusual, you flag me immediately. Holden's voice crackled back. Neurological? That's not standard. Neither is this feeling, I said. Humor me. A pause. Then, reluctantly. Understood. Captain Soren made the call half an hour later. Larkspur, Meridian. We will provide escort and remote diagnostic support. We can also transfer limited supplies via drone. Docking is not authorized. The reply came almost instantly. The same man, the same smile. Docking is necessary, he said. Captain Soren's expression hardened. It is not. We can assist without physical contact. The man's smile widened by a fraction. It was subtle, but it made my stomach tighten. Docking is necessary, he repeated, with the same tone he might use to state the time. Captain Soren leaned forward. Captain, you are requesting to dock with an Imperial transport in transit. That is not a negotiation. You will accept remote support, or you will be left behind. For the first time, the man blinked. Once. And when he opened his eyes again, his gaze wasn't focused on Captain Soren. It was focused on me. Lieutenant Meridian Voss, he said. Every head on the bridge turned toward me. I felt the blood drain from my face. How does he know my name? The comm officer's hands hovered above the console, frozen. Captain Soren's voice dropped into something colder. Larkspur, explain how you have access to our crew registry. The man on the screen tilted his head slightly, as if listening to a sound only he could hear. Then he spoke, and his voice was still calm, still clear, but it carried a new shape, like two rhythms layered on top of each other. We do not access, he said. We observe. Behind him, The bridge of the Larkspur was visible in soft focus. For a moment, I thought I saw someone pass in the background. Then I realized the figure had been standing there the entire time, perfectly still, just out of frame, like a shadow waiting for its cue. The man's smile remained. "Docking is necessary," he said again, gently, as if he were trying to help us understand something simple. And inside my skull, behind my eyes, I felt the briefest pressure. Not pain, not a headache. A touch, like the brush of a finger against the inside of a locked door. After the channel cut, nobody spoke for a full 5 seconds. In that silence, the Meridian's bridge sounded different. The soft, cooling fans under the consoles, the low vibration of the hull as we rode the transit lane's gravitational guidance like a bead on a wire, the faint tick of the chronometer that ran even when nobody looked at it. Captain Soren was the first to move. He didn't shout. He didn't slam his fist down. He did something worse. He got careful. "Lieutenant Voss," he said, still staring at the dead display. "Report." I swallowed. My throat felt tight, like my body had decided breathing was optional. They knew my name. No transponder ping should provide it. They could have intercepted internal comms. "Not at that range," the comm officer muttered. "Not through lane shielding. They'd need a relay." "And the signal was too clean," the sensor officer added. "Like it was inside our hull." Captain Soren's eyes flicked to the comm officer. "Run a diagnostic on our comm suite. Full sweep. I want to know if anything's riding our carrier." The officer nodded, fingers already moving. Captain Soren turned to me again. "Security posture. Seal non-essential hatches," I said. "No docking, no tether, no boarding parties. Remote drone transfer only, if we do anything at all." He nodded once. "Engineering." The chief engineer, Rel, leaned forward from his station. "Their telemetry indicates an unstable field containment. If it fails, it'll rip their drive coil apart. They'll be dead in minutes." "Could be faked," I said. "It's good fake," Rel replied, and there was a hint of annoyance in his tone. "If it's fake, they built it to fool me specifically." Captain Soren leaned back, gaze hard. "All right, no docking. We'll offer remote assistance again, and if they refuse, we leave. Lieutenant Voss, I want you on the channel this time. If they're focused on you, I want to control the vector of that." My stomach tightened. "You want me to talk to them?" "I want you to listen," he corrected, voice low. "You felt something?" I hesitated, then nodded. Pressure, like a touch. Nothing physical. Just a sensation behind my eyes. Dr. Halden's voice came through the internal comm before I could say more. "Bridge, this is medical. Lieutenant Voss, I'm already pulling your baseline neural scans from last month's fitness check. If you're reporting anomalous sensation, I want you down here after shift." "Copy," I said, and tried not to sound like I was already sick. Captain Soren motioned to the comm officer. "Open the channel." Static, then the Larkspur's bridge again. The same man appeared, same uniform, same calm smile. But now, knowing he'd looked through our hull like it was glass, his face didn't look human anymore. It looked like an imitation of one. "Imperial Transport Meridian," he said. "We acknowledge your concern." Captain Soren's voice was clipped. "Identify yourself." "I am Captain Arlen Maeve," the man said. It was a name like any other, too ordinary. Captain Soren nodded toward me. "Lieutenant Voss will speak on behalf of ship security." My mouth went dry. I leaned in slightly toward my station microphone. "Captain Maeve, you addressed me by name. Explain how." He blinked once, slowly, as if the act was expensive. "We observe." "That's not an answer," I said, forcing steadiness. "You're in a sealed transit lane. Our registry is encrypted. Our internal comms are shielded. You cannot observe my name." A small pause. Then he said softly, "You are loud." I felt the hairs on my arms rise. "Excuse me?" Captain Maeve's smile didn't change, but something in his eyes did, as if the focus shifted past the lens and into the room I was sitting in. Some minds are loud. They radiate. They leak. Captain Soren cut in. This conversation is about your request. You are denied docking. We will provide drone transfer of supplies and remote guidance. Agree or decline. Captain Maeve listened with the patience of a machine. Docking is necessary. I leaned forward. Why? Another pause. Not hesitation. Consultation. Because you are injured, he said. Your minds are fractured. You do not know you are bleeding. Rel swore under his breath. The sensor officer's hands tightened around the edge of his console. Captain Soren's eyes narrowed. We are not injured. Captain Maeve's head tilted again, that subtle listening posture. You are afraid. Fear is a symptom. Isolation is a symptom. Your empire sends you into the dark and calls it expansion. It is inefficient. My heart kicked hard in my chest. That word, efficient. It didn't belong in a distress call. Captain Maeve, I said, you're a merchant. You're not qualified to diagnose our psychology. I am not a merchant, he said, still smiling. The temperature in the bridge seemed to dip, just slightly, like the ship's systems had taken a breath. Captain Soren didn't flinch. Then you are in violation of Imperial transit law. Identify your vessel's true status, or you will be marked hostile and interdicted at next relay. Captain Maeve's smile widened again, almost kindly. There will be no relay. Captain Soren's jaw tightened. Explain. And this time, when Captain Maeve spoke, I heard it clearly. The faint double layer in his voice, like two people sharing one throat. We have already made contact, he said, not with your ship, with your thoughts. My vision fuzzed at the edges for a heartbeat. The bridge lights seemed too bright, too white. I blinked hard and it passed, but the sensation left behind the memory of being touched again. Behind my eyes, right where thoughts start. I swallowed. That's not possible. Captain Maeve turned his gaze fully to me. It is happening. Dr. Holden's voice crackled again through internal comm, urgent now. Bridge. I'm seeing irregular microspikes in several crew baselines, not just Lieutenant Voss. 3 others on my monitor show transient anomalies. Low level, but unusual. Headache reports are coming in from Deck 4. Captain Soren's face tightened. How many? 4 so far, Holden said. They describe pressure behind the eyes, dizziness. One says he tasted metal in the back of his throat. Metal. I'd tasted nothing, but suddenly, my mouth felt wrong, like the air itself had edges. Captain Soren held up a hand, cutting off further comm chatter. His eyes stayed on the Larkspur's captain. What are you doing? Captain Maeve didn't look surprised. You will dock, he said gently. We will repair. Captain Soren's voice lowered into something sharp. We will not. The man on the screen smiled, and for the first time, that smile looked like it belonged to something that didn't understand why it was wearing it. Then you will break, he said, and the broken parts will be used anyway. I felt the pressure again, stronger this time. Not pain, not exactly. More like someone pressing on the inside of a sealed container, testing the integrity, searching for a seam. My hand went to the edge of my console without me deciding to. My fingers dug in, grounding myself in something solid. Stop, I said, and the word came out harsher than I intended. Captain Maeve blinked once. We cannot stop what has already begun. Behind him, in the blurred background of the Larkspur's bridge, that motionless figure shifted slightly. Just enough for me to see a human outline, head angled at an unnatural degree, as if listening through bone. And then, very quietly, I heard something else. Not through the speakers. Inside my skull. A voice that wasn't sound, but intention shaped into language. Open. I froze. My breath caught. Captain Soren's voice seemed far away. "Lieutenant?" I couldn't answer. My eyes were on the display, but I wasn't seeing Captain Maeve anymore. I was seeing the space behind him, the dim corridor, the still figure. And I understood, suddenly, with a clarity that made my stomach drop. The figure wasn't waiting for a cue. It was waiting for me. "Open," the thought repeated, patient and sure, like a hand on a latch. I forced my voice through my teeth. "Captain, they're in our heads." Captain Soren didn't hesitate. "Cut the channel." The comm officer slammed the control. The display went dark. The pressure behind my eyes eased by a fraction, like a hand withdrawing, but not leaving. Not truly. Captain Soren stood. "All hands, condition grey. Seal the ship. No one leaves their compartment without escort. Medical, start screening for neurological anomalies. Security teams to docking. Bays and engineering access points. Lieutenant Voss." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the same thing I felt in my own chest, the moment when protocol stops being enough. "You're coming with me," he said. "We're going to figure out how they're talking to you." As I stood, my knees felt slightly wrong, like the messages from my muscles arrived half a second late. And in the back of my mind, like a whisper behind a door, something waited. Not angry, not rushed, certain. Captain Soren didn't take me to medical. He took me somewhere worse. The Meridian had spaces nobody thought about unless something broke. Service corridors behind the habitat ring, maintenance galleries that ran along the spine, narrow compartments where the ship's nervous system lived in bundled cables and humming relays. Places designed to be forgotten because remembered places invite fear. We moved fast. 2 Marines fell in behind us, rifles held low but ready, boots silent on the deck plating. The shipwide announcement had already pushed everyone into their assigned compartments. Doors sealed, vent dampers narrowed. A transport meant to breathe freely now inhaled through a straw. Condition grey. It was the first escalation before full combat lockdown. The "we are not dead yet, but we might be soon" setting. As we walked, the internal comms filled with low-level noise. Medical calling for volunteers. Engineering reporting containment checks. Security teams confirming hatch seals. Every voice was controlled, a little too controlled, like we'd all decided panic was something that happened to other ships. I kept waiting for the thought voice to return. Open. It didn't. But the absence didn't comfort me. It felt like someone choosing not to speak because they were close enough to watch my reaction without words. Captain Soren stopped at a security junction outside the ship's communications relay bay. The door was thick, armored, and layered with dampening materials to keep our comms clean. A place where nothing should leak. The chief comm technician, Juno Rivek, met us there with a datapad clutched to her chest like a shield. She was normally a bright-eyed woman who treated frequency bands like music. Now her face looked pale under the corridor lights. "Captain," she said. "Lieutenant." Soren didn't waste time. "Report. Did they piggyback our signal?" Revek shook her head. "No foreign carrier, no injected waveform. We ran a full spectrum sweep. Nothing." "Then how did their signal come in so clean?" Soren demanded. Revek hesitated. "It didn't come in clean, sir. Not technically. It came in aligned." "What does that mean?" I asked. She glanced at me, eyes flicking away like she didn't want to look too long. "It means our receiver array didn't have to translate. It's like they were already speaking in our format, as if they knew exactly how our comm suite would reconstruct the data." I felt my stomach shift. "So they predicted our decoding?" Revek swallowed. "Or they matched it on purpose." Soren's voice stayed level. "Any evidence they're using a relay in the lane?" "No. Lane traffic is minimal. No drones, no satellites, no ghost nodes," she said. But there's something else. She tapped the datapad, pulling up a waveform analysis. To me, it looked like a jagged line, meaningless, but Revek's fingers traced it with precision. Here, she said, their voice transmission contains micro-variations that shouldn't exist in human speech. Subsonic pulses, just below our normal hearing range, embedded like a carrier inside their words. Soren's eyes narrowed. Subliminal signals. Not subliminal, Revek said quietly. It's patterned, like it's meant to resonate with something. I heard my own voice before I decided to speak. With the brain. Revek's eyes snapped to me. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just looked at me like I'd guessed a word nobody wanted to say out loud. Captain Soren exhaled through his nose. So they're broadcasting something that interacts with neural tissue. Maybe, Revek said. But Captain, that shouldn't work through our dampening. Our comm suite strips out low-frequency drift. Soren stared at the waveform. Unless we didn't strip it out. Revek's face tightened. Unless it's not drift. Unless it's precisely where our system doesn't filter. Like they knew our blind spot. Something cold crawled down my spine. Soren nodded to one of the Marines. Lock this bay down. No external comms until we reconfigure the entire suite. If we need to speak, we do it through tight beam laser only. The Marine moved to comply. Soren turned to me. You're going to medical now. I opened my mouth to argue, then realized I didn't want to be alone with my own skull. We moved again, faster toward the medbay. The corridor lights seemed harsher now, and shadows in the corners felt too deep for a ship with this much illumination. On the way, I caught flashes through small viewport panels. Families clustered in compartment commons. Children pressed close to their parents. Crew huddled around wall displays watching security notices. I saw fear in their faces, the soft panic of people who had trusted the Meridian to be a safe corridor between worlds. They didn't know, yet that the danger hadn't come from outside. It had come in riding our attention. Medical smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Dr. Halden stood at a console with a neural scanner ring behind him, its smooth metal frame shaped to fit around a human skull like a halo designed for execution. He looked up as we entered. Lieutenant Voss, Captain, I've got preliminary data. Holden's voice was professional, but his eyes were bloodshot in the way of someone who'd gone from routine to crisis without time to adjust. He motioned me to the scanner. I sat. The ring slid into place, cold against the air, a sensation like standing under a quiet waterfall. Try to relax, Holden said. The more stable you are, the easier it is to see what's abnormal. I almost laughed. Relax. Captain Soren remained standing, arms crossed, watching both Halden and the door like an enemy might walk through it wearing a friendly face. The scanner hummed, a faint vibration in my teeth. Halden stared at the readout, then his jaw tightened. Well? Soren asked. Halden didn't answer immediately. His fingers moved across the console, pulling up comparative scans. He looked like a man who didn't want to believe his own instruments. Lieutenant, he said finally, do you have a history of migraines? No, I said. Never. Any head trauma, concussions, neural implants? No implants, I said. No trauma. Halden swallowed. Then explain this. He rotated the display so I could see. The scan showed my brain as a layered map of activity. I didn't know enough neurology to read it, but I could see the highlighted region pulsing in an area near the base, deep and central. What is that? I asked. Halden spoke softly, as if volume might make it real. That's not a tumor, not a lesion. It's an activation pattern, like a second rhythm operating alongside your normal neural activity. Captain Soren's voice went cold. A foreign signal. Halden nodded once. It's faint. It's intermittent, but it's there. My mouth went dry. So they're doing something to me. Halden's eyes met mine. Not just you. He tapped the console, bringing up 3 other scans. Names flashed beside them. Ensign Pell, Technician Mora, Junior Engineer Dace. All three showed the same faint pattern. Captain Soren's face hardened. How many total? Holden didn't look away. As of 2 minutes ago, 12? The number hit like a physical blow. 12, I echoed. Holden's voice dropped lower, the same number as the Larkspur's crew manifest. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the chair arms, feeling the metal under my palms, anchoring myself. Captain Soren didn't move, but I saw something shift behind his eyes. The moment a commander realizes the problem isn't a threat, it's a process. Holden leaned in, voice urgent. Captain, I can't tell you what it is, but it behaves like an implanted pattern, like a template that wants to synchronize. It spikes when the external comm channel is open, then fades when we shut it down. Soren's eyes narrowed. Then we keep it shut. Holden hesitated. Captain, there's a second concern. Soren's gaze sharpened. Speak. Holden pointed at the scan's deep highlighted region. This pattern isn't just sitting there. It's mapping, growing, like it's searching for pathways. And Lieutenant Voss... I felt my pulse in my throat. Holden's voice softened in a way that scared me more than his clinical tone. It's closest to your language centers. My hands went numb. And in the sudden silence that followed, the thought voice returned, not as a whisper, but as a calm certainty blooming behind my eyes. Soon. I didn't sleep. Medical released me after locking my scan data behind 3 levels of encryption, and a promise that release didn't mean clear. It meant mobile. It meant Captain Soren wanted me where decisions were being made, not sedated in a medbay while something learned how to use my mouth. They gave me a suppressant, not enough to knock me out, just enough to dull the edges. Holden warned me it might slow reaction time, but I didn't care. If the thing in my head wanted my language centers, I wasn't about to leave them unguarded. The Meridian felt different after Condition Grey. Quieter, yes, but not empty. More like the silence of a held breath. The ship's lights were dimmed to emergency levels in non-essential corridors. Bulkheads sealed in layered sections, turning familiar routes into dead ends. Security patrols moved in pairs now, rifles visible, visors down. Pairs. I hated that my mind kept noticing it. Captain Soren convened an emergency command meeting in the secondary bridge. Smaller, more defensible, wrapped in sensor-dampening fields. Only senior crew. Only people who needed to know. I sat at the table with my hands folded, feeling like they belonged to someone else. Every few minutes, I felt a faint pressure behind my eyes, like a reminder tap. Soon. It hadn't said anything else. It didn't need to. Revik was there, pale but composed. Rel leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. Dr. Holden sat with his datapad clenched tight enough to whiten his knuckles. Captain Soren stood at the head, hands on the table, posture rigid. All right, Soren said. We know 3 things. 1. The Larkspur can interact with our crew neurologically without physical contact. 2. The interaction is targeted and patterned. 3. It escalates with exposure. He looked directly at me. Lieutenant Voss has experienced direct intrusion. I felt eyes on me. I didn't look away. Rel spoke first. Captain, if they can do this without docking, why are they insisting on it? The question hung there, heavy. Revik answered quietly. Because remote access has limits. Soren nodded. Explain. Revik pulled up a schematic of the Meridian, overlaying it with signal cones. Whatever they're doing piggybacks on attention, language, recognition. They can nudge, map, influence, but it's slow. Docking would give them proximity, physical infrastructure, direct access to our systems and our bodies. Holden added, neural tissue responds exponentially to stimulus strength. Closer range means faster integration. I swallowed. Integration of what? Holden met my eyes. A controlling structure, something that replaces executive function without destroying personality. Rel's jaw tightened. Mind control. Holden shook his head. No, that's crude. This is more like administrative override. That word again. Soren exhaled. Then the docking. Insistence makes sense. They're trying to speed up the process. And if we don't let them, Rel said, they keep nudging until enough of us are compromised to open the door for them. No one argued. The logic was airtight. Captain, Revek said, hesitating. There's something else. Soren turned. Go on. I've been analyzing the cadence of their signal spikes, she said. They aren't random. They're scheduled, like maintenance cycles. I felt cold. You're saying they've done this before? Revek nodded. And not just once. This feels routine. Silence pressed down on the room. Soren straightened. All right, options. Rel spoke first. We run. Break from the lane. Emergency jump. Leave them behind. Revek shook her head. Lane exit under these conditions risks catastrophic misjump. We'd lose half the ship. Holden added, and it wouldn't solve the problem. The pattern's already seeded. Jumping doesn't remove it. All eyes turned to me. I didn't like that. There's another option, I said slowly. We talk to them. Rel scoffed. You want to negotiate with something inside your head. I want to learn, I said. They're not hiding. They think this is normal. That gives us leverage. Soren studied me. You'd be bait. I nodded. I already am. Holden leaned forward. Captain, I don't recommend prolonged exposure. Lieutenant Voss is already showing deep mapping near speech and decision-making centers. Another contact could accelerate takeover. I felt the pressure behind my eyes pulse, almost approving. Soon. Soren was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Controlled exposure. Tight beam lasercom only. No audio. Text interface. Revek blinked. Text? Language without voice, Soren said. We remove the carrier. Revek nodded slowly. It might work, if the embedded pattern relies on acoustic resonance. And if it doesn't, Rel said, we hand them our thoughts in writing. I looked at Soren. Captain, they already know how I think. Writing won't change that. He held my gaze. Lieutenant, if this goes wrong... I know, I said. You cut me off. Holden's mouth tightened. You can't say that like it's acceptable. I surprised myself by smiling. Doctor, it's not acceptable. It's necessary. Soren made the call. Revek set up the link in the secondary bridge. A tight beam laser channel, point to point, no audio, no carrier wave. Just text packets bouncing across the void. The Larkspur responded instantly. Text channel opened. Their words appeared on the display, clean and precise. Hello, Lieutenant Meridian Voss. My fingers hovered over the input pad. Hello, I typed back. A pause, longer than before. You are loud even in silence. I felt the pressure increase, faint but noticeable. You are intruding, I typed. No, the reply came. We are correcting. Correcting. What are you? I typed. Another pause. We are administrators. The word hit harder on the screen than it had in speech. Administrators of what? Humanity. Rel swore quietly. That's not your role, I typed. Your role is inefficient. The reply came. You bleed. You divide. You resist optimization. Optimization toward what? A longer pause. I felt something shift behind my eyes, like a finger tracing grooves. Continuity. Holden leaned closer to the display, whispering, Ask about the hosts. I typed. What happens to the people you use? The reply was immediate. They remain. They are preserved. Preserved how? As functional instances. My stomach turned. Are they aware? Yes. Do they consent? Another pause. Consent is a temporary concept. Rel slammed his fist into the table. That's it. They're parasites. No, the text updated. Faster now. We are symbionts. You kill identity, I typed. We eliminate chaos. The pressure spiked. I gasped, fingers tightening on the console. Soren's hand hovered near the cutoff. I forced myself to keep typing. Why do you need docking? Proximity increases success rate. Success of what? Colonization. That word again, but now stripped of banners and speeches. You're taking us over, I typed. No, the reply came. We are integrating you. I felt a flicker of something else then. Not pressure, curiosity. You are a node, the text continued. You can be a bridge. A bridge to what? To a humanity that endures. Soren cut in, voice low. Lieutenant, that's enough. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. What happens if we refuse? I typed quickly, before he could stop me. The reply came slower this time. Deliberate. Refusal is pain. Eventual failure. Assimilation will occur via other vectors. I swallowed. You've done this before. Yes. How many ships? A pause that felt like a held breath. Many. Soren slammed. The cutoff. The text vanished. The pressure receded slightly, like a tide pulling back. I sagged in my chair, sweat cold on my back. Captain Soren stood over me. Lieutenant, are you still you? I laughed, a short, breathless sound. For now. In the quiet that followed, I realized something that made my blood run cold. They hadn't threatened us with destruction. They'd promised inevitability. After we cut the channel, Captain Soren ordered the secondary bridge sealed. Not metaphorically, physically. Bulkhead doors slid into place with a sound that vibrated through my bones. Thick slabs of armored composite locking us into a space designed to survive decompression, fire, and boarding actions. What it wasn't designed for was the idea that the enemy was already seated at the table, quiet, patient, and learning. Medical wanted me sedated. Security wanted me isolated. Engineering wanted me vented out an airlock before I could become a problem. Captain Soren overruled all of them. Lieutenant Voss stays under my supervision, he said, voice hard. If they're mapping him, then he's our best sensor. You don't blind yourself because you're afraid of what you might see. I appreciated that. I also understood what it meant. They were keeping me close, because if I stopped being me, they wanted to be able to end it fast. I didn't say that out loud. The next 12 hours were a study in controlled collapse. Dr. Holden's reports kept coming in, each worse than the last. The number of affected crew rose steadily. Not dramatically. Not all at once. 1 here, 2 there. Always 12 ahead of the Larkspur's manifest, like a shadow moving just ahead of the light. The symptoms followed a pattern. Pressure behind the eyes. Mild disorientation. A sense of being observed even when alone. Then came the subtler changes. Emotional flattening. Delayed reaction to unexpected stimuli. A tendency to pause before answering questions, as if waiting for something, or someone. Security footage began to show it too. Crew members stopping in corridors for no obvious reason. Heads tilting slightly. Pairs forming without instruction. Pairs. Captain Soren ordered a full review of ship movement logs. We're looking for clustering, he said. They're not random. They never are. He was right. The affected crew gravitated toward critical infrastructure, environmental control nodes, auxiliary power junctions, maintenance access points near the docking collar. Not actively sabotaging. Not yet. Positioning. They're laying groundwork, Rel said grimly. Like engineers preparing a site before construction. Holden's voice came through comms, strained. Captain, I'm seeing accelerated neural adaptation in Lieutenant Voss. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Define accelerated. Holden didn't answer me directly. Captain, his brain is forming new pathways, not damage, organization. Soren's gaze flicked to me. Are you hearing them? I shook my head. Not like before. That was true. What I didn't say was that I didn't need to hear them anymore. Their presence was ambient now, like standing near a power generator. You don't hear it after a while. You just feel the hum in your teeth. Soon, the thought whispered again, not as a command, but as reassurance. You are progressing. I stiffened, fingers digging into my palms. Captain Soren noticed immediately. They spoke. I nodded once, not out loud. What did they say? That I'm progressing. Rel swore again. Captain, this is untenable. They're using him as a foothold. They already have a foothold, Soren snapped. He's just the deepest one. I met Soren's eyes. Captain, they're not lying about inevitability. Silence followed that. Soren's jaw tightened. Explain. I struggled to find words that didn't sound like surrender. They don't need to rush. They can afford to wait. Every interaction, every shared space, every thought we have about them, it feeds the mapping. Docking would speed it up, yes, but time alone will get them there. Rel slammed his fist against the bulkhead. Then we kill the ship, detonate the reactors, take them with us. The room went still. Captain Soren didn't react, immediately. When he did, his voice was low. That's not a decision you make for 2,000 civilians. They'll die anyway, Rel shot back. Or worse. I felt something twist behind my eyes. Not pressure, sadness, not mine. They are inefficient, the thought said. You feel it too. I clenched my jaw. Get out. The thought didn't leave. It didn't argue. It waited. Holden's voice cut in, urgent. Captain, we have a breach. Soren snapped upright. Where? Docking Bay 3, Holden said. Not physical, behavioral. 4 crew members bypassed a sealed access point without triggering alarms. Rel stared. That's impossible. No, Holden said quietly. It's deliberate. They used proper codes. My stomach dropped. They didn't hack, I said. They were authorized. Soren turned toward me slowly. Authorized by who? I swallowed. By themselves. Security feeds lit up on the main display. Docking Bay 3. The image showed 4 crew members standing at the bay control console. Calm. Still. Waiting. One of them was Ensign Pell. I'd trained him myself. Captain Soren barked into the comm. Pell! Step away from the console. Pell turned slowly, face neutral, eyes unfocused. Captain, Pell said, voice even. Docking is necessary. Rel shouted. Disable the bay. Already attempted, Revek said. Manual override engaged. They're inside the system. Soren leaned toward the console. Pell, you are ordered to stand down. Pell smiled. It wasn't his smile. Order acknowledged, Pell said. Priority overridden. The docking clamps began to cycle. A deep mechanical vibration rolled through the ship. Felt, rather than heard. The Meridian groaned softly, like an animal realizing the cage was opening. Soren's voice went sharp. Security teams, intercept Docking Bay 3. Non-lethal force authorized. On the feed, Marines poured into the bay, weapons raised. Pell and the others didn't move. The Marine squad leader raised a hand, shouting orders. Pell stepped forward. The squad leader hesitated. That was all it took. Pell reached the console and slammed his palm down. The docking collar began to extend. I felt the pressure spike hard enough to make me gasp. I dropped to one knee, clutching my head. Soon, the thought said again, louder now, so close. Soren's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. Lieutenant, fight it! I forced myself upright, vision swimming. Captain, they're not forcing them, they're convincing. Convincing them of what? Of relief. I saw it then, with terrifying clarity. The appeal. No more doubt. No more fear. No more choosing. Just function. Just purpose. I understood why Pell hadn't resisted. The Larkspur appeared on external cam. sliding closer now, docking lights glowing like patient eyes. Soren looked at me. If we sever the bay, can you... I don't know, I said honestly, but I know one thing. What? They want me conscious. Rel snapped. Then knock him out. No, I said quickly. If I'm unconscious, they'll rout around me. I'm not the infection, I'm the interface. Soren stared at me. I met his gaze. Captain, let me go to the bay. Rel exploded. Absolutely not. They're using my pathways, I said. If I'm close, I can feel where they're pushing. I might be able to interfere. Soren's jaw worked. This isn't a plan. It's a delay, I said, and delays are all we have. The ship shuddered again as the docking collar locked into its final extension. Metal met metal, connection established. And in my mind, the administrators did not celebrate. They simply opened a door. We reached Docking Bay 3 in under 4 minutes. That's fast on a ship the Meridian's size, but we weren't walking through normal corridors anymore. Captain Soren had security open-sealed maintenance routes, tight, ugly passages meant for crawling techs, not officers with sidearms and a conscience. The air down there smelled like warm metal and recycled dust. Every surface vibrated with the slow, heavy rhythm of the docking collar locked to a foreign hull. Connection. I could feel it in my teeth. Soren moved with 2 Marines at his shoulders. Rel followed, face thunderous, one hand on a diagnostic pad like he might strangle the ship into compliance. I was between them, which meant I was either protected or contained, possibly both. Halfway down the service tunnel, the thought returned, stronger now, not a whisper behind a door, but a presence in the room. You will not be harmed, it said. I nearly stumbled. The words weren't heard, they were received. Like a packet of meaning delivered directly into the wet circuitry of my mind. I forced my lips to move, speaking out loud because sound felt like armor. Captain, they're talking again. Soren's head snapped toward me. What are they saying? That I won't be harmed, I said. Rel let out a bitter laugh. How generous. The Marines exchanged glances behind their visors. They didn't look at me the way they had earlier, not just as an officer, but as a risk that might suddenly stand still and open a door. We reached the final hatch leading into Docking Bay 3. The outer lights were off, but emergency strips bathed the corridor in red. The hatch's status display flashed in angry amber. Manual override engaged. Soren keyed his comm. Bay team, report. The answer came immediately, and it wasn't the Marine Squad leader. It was Ensign Pell. Captain, Pell said, calm as a weather report. Docking is complete. Stand down. Soren's jaw clenched. Pell, you are relieved of duty. Step away from the console and kneel. A pause. Then Pell replied, still calm. Relief of duty acknowledged. Function continues. Rel muttered, he's not even pretending anymore. Soren's hand hovered near the manual hatch release. Non-lethal only, he told the Marines. Stun and restrain. If anyone raises a lethal weapon, you aim it at the console, not the crew. The Marines nodded. Soren opened the hatch. The bay was lit by 2 sources, emergency strips along the floor, and the Larkspur's docking lights, which spilled through the collar like pale moons. The air was colder in the bay, thick with the metallic scent of seals and lubricant. And there they were. Pell and the 3 others stood near the control console, hands at their sides, faces blank. Not struggling, not frightened, not defiant, just waiting. Marines formed a line in front of them, rifles aimed low. Behind the line, the docking collar's inner iris was open, an illuminated tunnel leading into the Larkspur. The first thing that hit me wasn't what I saw, it was what I felt. A pressure in my skull that expanded outward, like a deep sea current pushing through my thoughts. The nearer I got to the open collar, the more that presence filled my head, smoothing edges, making sharp fear feel unnecessary. This is proximity, the thought said. almost conversational. This is efficiency. I staggered. My hand shot out, gripping a railing. Soren's voice snapped. "Voss, stay with me." I nodded, forcing air into my lungs. "I'm here." Pell's eyes shifted slightly, not toward Soren, toward me, and Pell smiled again. "You are the bridge," Pell said, but the voice that came out wasn't his. The cadence was wrong, too even, too patient. The Marines tightened their grips. One of them took a half step forward, stun baton raised. Soren lifted his hand. "Hold." He looked at Pell. "Who is speaking?" Pell's smile didn't change. "We are." Soren's voice went cold. "Administrators." "Yes," Pell said. "Docking is necessary." Soren pointed at the open collar. "You wanted docking. You have it. Now state your terms." Pell blinked once, slowly, like a puppet acknowledging the tug of a string. "Terms are not required." Rel snapped. "Then you're not leaving." Pell's gaze moved to Rel. "Leaving is irrelevant. Integration continues." One of the Marines, the squad leader, spoke sharply. "Ensign Pell, identify your command authorization." Pell looked at him with gentle pity. "You are afraid. That is inefficient." The squad leader's nostrils flared. His baton rose. Soren said louder, "Do not engage." But the baton came down anyway, a crack of electricity against Pell's shoulder. Pell didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. The baton's arc danced over his uniform, then grounded uselessly against the deck. The squad leader stared, shocked. Pell's head tilted slightly. "Pain is an obsolete deterrent." Then Pell lifted his hand, not fast, not threatening, and placed his palm against the console. A new sound joined the bay's mechanical hum, the faint hiss of the Larkspur's inner airlock cycling. The iris in the docking collar shifted, widening. Soren swore. "Cut the collar, now!" Rel moved to a nearby manual panel, fingers flying. "The bay controls are locked. They rerouted the safeties." "You can override," Soren snapped. "I can try," Rel growled. "But if I force it, we risk decompressing half the bay." Soren's eyes narrowed. "We risk it." Rel's jaw tightened. He slammed his fist onto the manual override. Alarm screamed, shrill, furious, panicked. The kind of alarm that says this ship was not built for what's happening. I felt the presence in my skull pulse. "Stop," it said. Not a request. A suggestion wrapped in certainty. My hands twitched. For a terrifying instant, my body wanted to obey. Soren noticed. His gun was in his hand, pointed downward, but his stance shifted. Ready. "Voss," he said quietly, the tone of a man speaking to someone standing on a ledge. "Look at me." I forced my eyes away from the open collar and onto him. "I'm trying." "Tell me your mother's name," he said. The question hit like a slap, not because it was personal, but because it was mine. "Elira," I said. "Your first posting." "Garrison Outpost Nimia Gate," I said, voice shaking. Soren nodded once. "Good. Now listen. They're pushing you. Don't give them the leverage." I swallowed, nodding. The collar's iris opened fully, and through it, the Larkspur's interior was visible. A corridor lit in dim blue, walls curved at odd angles like a ship built by someone who understood the idea of human, but not the comfort of straight lines. At the far end of that corridor, figures stood, not 12, more. They were human-shaped, but they stood too still, like mannequins arranged for a ritual. Faces pale in the blue light, eyes fixed forward, waiting. Then one of them stepped into the collar, a woman in merchant uniform, hair tied back, skin the color of warm ash, human. Her gait was smooth, controlled. She stopped at the threshold, just inside our bay, and she smiled. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Captain Soren," she said, voice calm and beautifully clear. "We thank you for your cooperation," Rel whispered. "How does she know his name?" I didn't answer. because the truth was blooming in my skull like a flower made of ice. They weren't just reading us. They were using us to introduce themselves. The woman's gaze landed on me. "Lieutenant Meridian Voss," she said, "you are progressing well." I felt my knees weaken. Soren's gun rose a fraction. The woman held out her empty hands. "Do not waste violence. Violence damages the vessel." "The vessel," Soren repeated, voice low. "Yes," she said, still smiling. "Your ship, your bodies, your empire's expansion. We will preserve it." My vision blurred at the edges, and the thought voice, now massive and close, spoke with gentle finality. "Now." The moment the thought said "now," my tongue went heavy. Not numb, not paralyzed. Heavy in the way a door feels heavy when someone presses from the other side. I could still move it, still speak, but every word had to be lifted like a weight. Captain Soren kept his weapons steady, not fully raised, not lowered. The Marines did the same. They were trained for boarding actions, for pirates and mutineers, for people who wanted things in ways a human could understand. This was different. The woman from the Larkspur stood in our bay like she owned the air. Her hands were open, palms visible, as if the gesture meant anything. "Captain," she said again, voice smooth, "we request compliance." Soren didn't blink. "You already have docking. That's all you're getting." The woman's smile softened, almost sympathetic. "You believe docking is the objective." "It isn't," Rel snapped. "It is an instrument," she replied. "Proximity increases efficiency, but efficiency is not the purpose." Soren's gaze narrowed. "Then state the purpose." The woman turned her head slightly, like she was listening to someone speak through her skull. "Continuity." The same word from the text channel, now spoken aloud like a prayer. I felt the pressure behind my eyes pulse in agreement. Soren's voice sharpened. "Continuity for whom?" "For humanity," she said. "For your empire, for your expansion, for the organisms you insist on preserving while letting them decay." Rel stepped forward, anger overriding caution. "You're not preserving anyone. You're hijacking them." The woman looked at him with that same gentle pity Pell had worn. "You confuse identity with function." A Marine on the left shifted his stance, baton raised. Soren flicked a glance at him, and the Marine stopped. Soren held the woman's eyes. "Name." The woman paused, and for the first time I saw something flicker across her face. Not fear, interference. "I am." "Lysa," she said, and the name sounded like it had been pulled from a shelf labeled human. Soren didn't accept it. "Your real designation." Lysa's smile returned. "We are administrators." I couldn't tell if the words were for us or for something inside my head. They felt like both. Soren's voice went low. "If you're administrators, who's in charge?" Lysa tilted her head again. "There is no hierarchy. There is alignment." "Alignment with what?" Soren pressed. Lysa's gaze drifted past him to the bay's overhead cameras, then to the Marines, then to me. "With survival." I forced myself to speak. My voice came out rougher than it should have. "You keep saying survival and continuity like that excuses consent." Lysa's eyes warmed slightly as she looked at me. Not kindness, recognition. "Lieutenant Meridian Voss," she said, "you are beginning to understand the shape of the problem. Consent is a story organisms tell themselves to justify inefficiency." Rel made a sound of disgust. "You're monsters." Lysa's gaze returned to him. "We do not contain malice." Soren's jaw tightened. "Malice isn't required." Behind Lysa, in the Larkspur's corridor, the figures remained motionless. Human faces in dim blue light, eyes open, bodies still. More than 12, far more. I counted quickly and lost the count, because they were layered in depth like a crowd arranged for a photograph. A ship built for 12 had turned into something else. Captain Soren spoke without looking away from Lysa. "Lieutenant Voss, you said you could feel where they're pushing." The pressure behind my eyes surged, as if the idea itself was offensive. I swallowed. "Yes." "Where?" Soren asked. I hesitated, then answered honestly. "Everywhere, but strongest when I focus on the collar." Lysa smiled. "Because the collar is a mouth." My stomach tightened. "A mouth for what?" Lisa's smile thinned into something precise. "For transfer." The Marines tensed. One of them whispered, "Captain, permission to restrain her." Soren didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked to Rel. "Status on severing." Rel's fingers danced over the manual panel. "I can blow the collar bolts, but it'll shear the seal. We'll vent the bay unless we slam emergency shutters in under 2 seconds. Soren's gaze stayed steady. "Can you do it?" Rel's face was grim. "Yes, but if anyone's inside the collar when it goes, they'll die." Everyone's eyes went to Pell and the other compromised crew near the console. Pell stood perfectly still, gaze fixed on me now, like I was a lighthouse and he was waiting for the beam. Soren's voice softened by a fraction. "Pell, step away. Last warning." Pell's mouth moved with calm obedience. "Docking is necessary." Soren exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry." I didn't realize he was talking to Pell until he turned his comm to private and said, almost gently, "Security teams, restrain Pell and the others, immediately." The Marines moved. 4 of them surged forward, batons raised, restraint cuffs ready. They hit Pell like a coordinated wave. Pell didn't fight. He didn't resist. He simply shifted, not physically, not with strength, but with something in his eyes that made the Marines hesitate for a heartbeat too long. And in that heartbeat, one of the Marines blinked hard, like he'd been struck by sudden dizziness. His baton dipped. Pell's hand rose and touched the Marine's forearm. Just a touch. The Marine's posture changed instantly, shoulders easing, tension draining from his stance as if someone had reached into him and turned off the alarm system. "Stand down," the Marine said, voice flat. Soren's eyes widened. "Don't touch them." Too late. The second Marine looked at the first, confused for a fraction of a second. Then his expression smoothed out. "Stand down," he repeated, like an echo. A cold clarity settled in my gut. This wasn't only broadcast, it was transmissible by contact. Lysa watched it all with calm approval. Proximity increases efficiency. Soren's voice turned to steel. "Rel, now." Rel slammed the override again. The bay screamed with alarms. Emergency shutters along the ceiling began to cycle into place. Heavy panels sliding on tracks, positioning to isolate the bay from the rest of the ship. Pell stepped backward toward the collar, eyes still on me. "Lieutenant Voss," Pell said, and the voice was layered, 2 rhythms sharing one throat. "Do not damage the vessel." My head throbbed. The pressure behind my eyes became a full hand now, pressing inward. "Open," it urged. "Let it happen. Relief is available." I clenched my fists until my nails bit skin. "No." Lisa's gaze sharpened slightly, the closest thing to surprise I'd seen on her face. "Resistance is pain." Soren's weapon rose fully now, aimed at Lysa's chest. "Back into your ship, now." Lysa didn't move. "Violence damages the vessel." "Then move," Soren said. For the first time, Lysa's smile faded, not into anger, into calculation. And then she stepped forward, not toward Soren, toward me. The pressure surged with her movement, as if my skull were a tuned instrument and she'd found the correct note. "You are the bridge," she said softly. "You can end this pain. You can end their fear." I felt my knees soften, my vision blurred. Soren shouted, "Voss, don't look at her." But my eyes were locked on hers, not by choice, not fully. There was something inside that wanted the connection. wanted the smoothness, wanted the relief of not being divided. And in that moment, I understood the trap. They weren't conquering us. They were offering us the thing the Empire never offered: certainty. Lysa raised her hand, slow, careful, like you'd reach for a frightened animal. I forced my mouth open, pushing the words out like glass. Captain, cut the lights. Soren hesitated only a heartbeat. Revek, black out the bay. The emergency strips along the floor snapped off. The docking lights from the Larkspur became the only illumination, pale and distant through the collar. Shadows swallowed the bay's corners. Faces became outlines, and Lisa's eyes vanished from my direct focus. The pressure eased suddenly, like a grip released. I sucked in a breath, trembling. Soren barked, "Now Rel!" Rel hit the final command. The docking collar shuddered as explosive bolts armed for severance. Lisa's voice came from the darkness, calm and close. "You cannot sever what is already inside." And then, from the corridor behind me, inside the Meridian, not the Larkspur, I heard a door unlock. Not a bay door, a ship internal hatch. A hatch that had been sealed under Condition Grey. A hatch that could only open with authorized codes. Soren spun, weapons swinging toward the sound, and my stomach dropped as I realized the worst part. While we watched the mouth, something else had been opening from the inside. The sound came again, a soft mechanical click, followed by the unmistakable sigh of pressure equalization. Someone, or something, had just been granted access to the Meridian from the inside. "Report!" Captain Soren snapped, spinning toward the bay's internal corridor. Revek's voice crackled over comms, sharp with disbelief. "Captain, multiple internal hatches are unlocking across decks 5 through 7. Authorization codes are valid. They're not forcing anything." My chest tightened. They don't need to. The emergency lights flickered back on in the bay, dim red strips painting everything in blood tones. Lisa stood motionless near the collar, her face calm, unreadable. Pell and the others remained near the console, no longer the immediate problem. The problem was the ship behind us. Soren's voice cut through the chaos. "Security teams, fall back to corridor containment. Do not allow spread. Repeat, do not allow spread." "Captain," came the response from another security team, voice strained. "We're encountering resistance, not hostile, just non-compliant." Non-compliant. That word had lost its meaning. Rel's fingers hovered uselessly over the severance controls. "If we blow the collar now, we'll trap them on our side," he said. "Whatever's already in the bay stays with us." Soren's jaw worked. Options. I closed my eyes. The pressure surged, not like a shove this time, but like an invitation unfolding. Images bled into my thoughts. Not visions exactly, but structured impressions, networks, pathways, minds linked not by emotion, but by purpose. "This is the phase you fear," the presence said calmly. "Loss of ambiguity." I forced my eyes open. "Captain, they're not trying to rush anymore." Soren glanced at me. "What changed?" "They don't need the collar," I said. "It was just efficiency. They've already seeded enough crew." Lysa spoke softly from the bay. "Correct." Soren aimed his weapon at her again. "Shut up." She inclined her head. "Violence damages the vessel." Soren barked into comms. "Engineering, initiate full compartmental isolation. Seal decks 5 through 7 completely. Cut environmental flow." Revek's voice rose in alarm. "Captain, that will..." "I know what it will do," Soren said. "Do it." The ship groaned as bulkheads slammed into place across entire decks. Somewhere, civilians screamed as lights cut out and gravity hiccuped. The Meridian was tearing herself into pieces to slow an infection that moved faster than steel. Holden's voice came in, frantic. "Captain, we're losing medical telemetry from multiple patients. They're not unconscious. They're just no longer responding." "They're responding," I said quietly. "Just not to us." Soren turned to me sharply. "Lieutenant, you said you could interfere." I nodded, heart hammering. I can feel the pathways, where they're thickest. Then tell me how to cut them. I hesitated because the answer terrified me. You can't cut them, not without cutting people. Soren stared at me. Meaning? They're not riding signals anymore, I said. They're riding decisions, shared intent. Every compromised crew member becomes a relay. Rel's face drained of color. So, even if we kill the Larkspur, they persist, I finished. The administrators don't live in the ship, they live in us. Lisa smiled faintly. You are learning quickly. Soren's finger tightened on the trigger. I won't let you have my ship. Lisa looked genuinely curious. Why not? Because it's mine, Soren said, and because the people on it chose to be human. Lisa regarded him for a long moment. Choice is inefficient. The pressure behind my eyes surged hard enough to make me cry out. I dropped to one knee again, clutching my head. Soren moved instantly, crouching beside me. Voss, I forced myself to breathe. They're rerouting, using me as a reference point. Lisa's voice softened. You are compatible. That is rare. I looked up at her, rage burning through the fog. You don't get to decide what we are. Her smile faded. Decision is the problem. And then, like a knife sliding between ribs, the realization hit me. They weren't here for the Meridian. They were testing us. Captain, I gasped. They're not here to take this ship. Soren's eyes locked on mine. Then why? Because we're Imperial, I said. Because we're connected to dozens of colonies. Because our logs, our crew, our routes are a map, Soren finished. Yes, I said. We're a survey. Lisa nodded. Correct. Soren rose slowly. You used us to scout the Empire. We used you to understand resistance thresholds, Lisa said. You are within acceptable parameters. Rel snarled. Acceptable for what? For expansion, she replied. The word echoed in the bay like a death sentence. Soren turned to me again. Lieutenant, can you stop them? I closed my eyes, reaching inward, not fighting the presence this time, but feeling its shape, its logic, its blind spots. They rely on alignment, I said slowly. Shared certainty. That's how they propagate. Soren frowned. Meaning? If I introduce contradiction, I said. If I destabilize the alignment, you could disrupt the network. Holden's voice cut in, understanding dawning. Yes, I said, but only briefly, and it'll hurt. Soren didn't hesitate. Do it. Lisa's head tilted sharply. For the first time, she looked concerned. Lieutenant Voss, she said, voice firmer now. Deviation causes harm. I looked at her through blurred vision. So does slavery. I focused inward, not on resisting, but on remembering. Fear, doubt, regret. The messy, inefficient noise of being human. I thought of Elira's laugh, of my first posting, of Pell's stupid jokes before his smile stopped being his own. I forced uncertainty into the network. The effect was immediate. The pressure in my skull spiked into agony, like my brain was being pulled apart along invisible seams. I screamed, dropping fully to the deck. Around me, crew members froze mid-motion. Some clutched their heads, others staggered, confusion flashing across blank faces. Pell gasped, eyes widening in sudden horror. What did I... Lisa stumbled, her perfect calm cracking. Stop, she said sharply. This is inefficient, Soren shouted. Security! Restrain anyone coming out of it! I tasted blood, but I kept pushing. The administrators recoiled, not in fear, but in recalculation. Their certainty fractured, their alignment trembled. For one precious moment, they didn't know. And, in that moment, Captain Soren made his choice. All hands, he barked over shipwide comms. Emergency protocol Sunfall. This is not a drill. Rel's eyes widened. Captain, Sunfall means... I know what it means, Soren said. Lieutenant Voss bought us a window. We're using it. Lysa looked at him, something like anger flickering at last. You will damage the vessel. Soren met her gaze. I'm willing to. I felt hands grab my shoulders, lifting me as the pain peaked. The ship's core systems began to reroute power, alarms shifting pitch as something far deeper than docking clamps began to spin up. Sunfall wasn't an evacuation, it was a burn. And as the Meridian prepared to tear herself apart to deny the administrators their prize, I realized with a cold certainty, even if we won here, this was only the beginning. Sunfall felt like the ship drawing a knife across her own throat. The Meridian's core systems didn't scream when Captain Soren initiated the protocol. They changed. Power rerouted with ruthless efficiency, non-essential systems collapsing into darkness as energy flooded into the spinal reactors and maneuvering drives. Gravity stuttered, then reasserted itself at a heavier pull, pinning me to the deck like the ship was trying to keep her organs from tearing loose. Hands dragged me backward, away from docking bay 3. I barely registered faces, Marines, medical techs, someone shouting my name. The pain in my skull had reached a level beyond sensation, a white-hot fracture where thought itself felt dangerous. But the pressure from the administrators was gone, not erased, disrupted. That absence was almost worse. Lysa staggered in the bay, one hand braced against the console, her perfect composure shattered. For the first time, her eyes held something recognizably human, confusion. This action is irrational, she said, voice strained. Damage exceeds acceptable loss. Captain Soren didn't slow as he backed toward the corridor, weapons still trained on her. That's the difference between us, he said. We don't calculate people as acceptable losses. Lysa straightened slowly, her expression smoothing again, but the delay told me everything. The alignment was broken. The administrators were still there, but no longer unified. Alarms changed pitch again, lower now, deeper, vibrating through bone and hull alike. The Meridian began to turn, not a graceful maneuver, but a brutal pivot driven by raw thrust. Rel's voice came over comms, hoarse. Captain, reactors are spooling beyond safe parameters. Sunfall will tear the docking collar apart in 30 seconds. Good, Soren said. Seal the bay. Sealing now. The emergency shutters slammed down between us and docking bay 3 with a thunderous finality. The Larkspur's pale lights vanished, replaced by armored steel and warning stripes. I sagged against the bulkhead as the hands holding me eased me to the deck. Dr. Holden knelt beside me, face pale. Lieutenant, stay with me. I laughed weakly. I don't think they're done with me. Holden pressed a hypo spray against my neck. This will help stabilize the neural feedback. It won't stop it. I felt the cool bite, then a dulling wave spread through my limbs. The thought voice returned, not singular this time, but fractured. Overlapping impressions, misaligned intents brushing against my consciousness like static. Correction required, deviation unacceptable, network instability detected. They weren't speaking to me anymore. They were arguing through me. Captain Soren's voice cut in over ship-wide comms. All hands brace. Prepare for sustained acceleration. The Meridian roared. The inertial dampeners struggled to keep up as the ship hurled herself forward along the transit lane, dragging the still-attached Larkspur like a parasite refusing to let go. Then came the sound, a deep, metallic shriek that traveled through the hull as the docking collar's explosive bolts detonated. The ship lurched violently. Someone screamed. The lights flickered, then stabilized. We were free. Rel's voice came through, breathless. Docking collar severed. Structural damage contained. The Larkspur... Static. Then a sensor officer cut in, voice shaking. Captain, the Larkspur is venting atmosphere. Their hull integrity failed when we broke acceleration. They're losing containment. Soren closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Then he opened them. Any pursuit? No, the officer said. They're not maneuvering. I felt a strange emptiness bloom where the pressure had been strongest. Not relief, loss. The administrator's presence receded. Not gone, but no longer anchored by proximity, like a tide pulling back, leaving debris embedded in the shore. Holden exhaled shakily. Neural readings across the ship are stabilizing. The affected crew, some are regaining awareness. Others? He didn't finish. I knew what he meant. Some pathways, once laid, didn't vanish just because the architect stepped away. Soren crouched in front of me, meeting my eyes. Lieutenant, you did it. I shook my head slowly. No, I slowed them. That was enough, he said. For us, I replied. The fractured impressions in my mind stirred again. Weaker now, disorganized. Assessment incomplete. Resistance exceeds predicted thresholds. Data acquired sufficient. My blood ran cold. They were withdrawing. Not defeated. Satisfied. Captain, I said hoarsely. They got what they came for. Soren's expression tightened. Explain. I swallowed. They weren't here to take the Meridian. They were here to learn how far they could push, before we broke. What we'd sacrifice. How we'd respond. And now they know, Soren said. Yes, I whispered. The ship shuddered again, gentler this time, as systems normalized. Somewhere, damage control teams fought fires and sealed ruptures. Somewhere else, families held each other in the dark. Holden helped me sit up. Lieutenant, you're going to need long-term monitoring. Whatever they did, it's not fully undone. I nodded. I know. The thought voices faded further, but one lingered. Faint, distant, like a signal echoing down an endless corridor. We will adapt. I shivered. Hours later, after emergency repairs stabilized the Meridian and the Larkspur drifted crippled and silent behind us, Captain Soren gathered the senior crew again. I was there, barely steady on my feet, because I insisted. What happened here does not leave this room, Soren said. The official report will list a hostile non-human encounter resulting in catastrophic failure of the opposing vessel. No mention of mental intrusion, no mention of administrators. Rel's mouth twisted. You think the Empire will listen? I think the Empire will bury it, Soren said. And that may buy us time. I looked up at him. Captain, they're already in the Empire. Silence fell. They don't need ships every time, I continued. They need contact, trade, diplomacy, curiosity. We showed them all of that. Soren held my gaze. Then what do you propose? I took a breath. We warn who we can, quietly, and we prepare for the day they stop pretending to be merchants. Holden nodded slowly. Because next time, they won't need docking. Soren straightened. Then we become inconvenient. I felt a strange mix of dread and resolve settle into my bones. The administrators had looked at humanity and seen inefficiency. We would show them unpredictability. As the Meridian limped back toward Imperial space, scarred but alive, I stared out through a viewport at the fading silhouette of the Larkspur, silent, broken, drifting. I didn't feel triumph. I felt watched. Because somewhere beyond the lanes, beyond the colonies, beyond the Empire's maps, something vast was recalculating, and it knew exactly what we were capable of now. They quarantined me for 37 days. Officially, it was post-exposure observation. Unofficially, it was fear wrapped in procedure. A single cabin near the Meridian's aft spine. No windows, no direct comms. Meals delivered by drone through a sealed slot. Medical scans twice a day. Security checks whenever someone's courage wavered. I didn't argue. After what I'd felt inside my own head, isolation felt almost merciful. Dr. Holden visited when he could. He brought charts, reassurance, carefully neutral language. He told me my neural activity was stabilizing, that the foreign patterns had degraded, that what remained could be explained as trauma, stress, after effects. He avoided my eyes when he said it. The thought voices were gone, mostly. Sometimes, when I was half asleep, I felt a faint alignment, like distant machinery turning somewhere far beyond the hull. Not pressing, not speaking, remembering. Captain Soren came once. He stood just inside the threshold, not stepping fully into the cabin, as if distance still mattered. He looked older than he had before docking Bay 3, the kind of older you don't recover from. The Meridian's been reassigned, he told me. Short routes, inner systems, no outer colonies. That won't help, I said. He didn't argue. No, but it buys time. He hesitated, then added, "The Empire commended us, quietly. A non-human contact incident resolved with minimal loss of life." I laughed, a short, hollow sound. Minimal. Soren's mouth tightened. They don't want details. They never do. He studied me for a long moment. If you could go back, would you do it again? I didn't answer immediately. I thought of Pell's face when the alignment broke. The horror, the understanding, the memory of relief ripped away. Yes, I said finally, because now we know what they offer. And what's that? Soren asked. An end to fear, I said, at the cost of choice. Soren nodded once. Then we fight it. Not with guns, I said quietly. With noise, with contradiction, with everything they can't align. He left without another word. 2 weeks later, they cleared me for restricted duty. Not command, not security. Advisory. A title designed to keep me useful and contained. I accepted without comment. The Meridian docked at an inner system relay station under heavy secrecy. Crew transfers were staggered, logs redacted, survivors dispersed across fleets like seeds scattered by a nervous hand. I watched Pell leave from a distance. He didn't look at me. He didn't smile anymore. They reassigned me to a bureau that didn't officially exist. Analysis, threat modeling, non-conventional contact assessment. I sat in rooms without windows, listened to recordings without sound, read transcripts stripped of context. Patterns emerged. Merchant ships with perfect paperwork. Diplomatic envoys with impeccable etiquette. Aid vessels arriving just a little too quickly after disasters. Always human. Always calm. Always efficient. Always leaving behind crews who paused before speaking, who formed pairs, who stopped dreaming. I wrote reports that escalated and then vanished. I warned where I could, quietly, in margins, in phrasing that would make the right minds uneasy. Most of the Empire didn't want to hear it. Efficiency is seductive. The administrators understood that better than we ever had. 3 months after the Meridian incident, I dreamed for the first time since docking Bay 3. I stood in a vast white space without walls. Lines stretched in every direction, intersecting, reorganizing, resolving into structures too large to perceive all at once. A voice, not spoken, not thought, addressed me. Assessment updated. I didn't answer. Resistance classified as anomalous. I felt no pressure, no pain, only attention. You will be studied. It conveyed. Your species exhibits disruptive variants. Good, I whispered in the dream. We call that being alive. A pause. Variance increases cost. Then pay it, I said. The space shifted. Lines rearranged. Expansion continues. I woke with my heart racing, palms slick with sweat. No pressure behind my eyes. No voice lingering. Just the certainty that somewhere, far beyond the Empire's borders, beyond the colonies and the lanes and the maps we pretended were complete, something vast was adjusting its models. The administrators hadn't failed. They'd adapted. And next time, they wouldn't come as merchants. They'd come as saviors. I sit here now, recording this not as a confession, but as a warning. Because the Empire will not tell you what it costs to be efficient. They will not tell you how easy it is to trade uncertainty for peace. They will not tell you that something out there has already decided what humanity should become. So listen carefully. If you meet a crew that never argues, if you meet a captain who never hesitates, if you meet a ship where fear has been neatly excised, run. Because the most terrifying thing in the universe is not an alien intelligence that hates us. It's one that understands us perfectly and still decides we need to be fixed. The message arrived 6 years later. It didn't come through official channels, no seals, no headers, no encryption keys I could trace. It appeared on a terminal I hadn't logged into in months, on a system that was supposed to be air-gapped and obsolete. Just text. Plain, clean, efficient. Notice of contact revision. Subject. Human variance index. Status. Updated. I stared at it for a long time before touching the keyboard. By then, I was no longer Lieutenant Meridian Voss. I was an analyst who wrote reports nobody acknowledged and warnings nobody circulated. I lived between layers of bureaucracy like a ghost that hadn't realized it was dead. I typed one word. Explain. The response came instantly. Initial assumptions regarding human compliance were inaccurate. Resistance parameters exceeded projections. Emotional noise generated unacceptable cascading costs. My hands trembled, but my mind was clear. They were still speaking our language, still learning. So you changed, you. Strategy, I typed. A pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. Direct integration results in degradation of system stability. Alternative methods selected. Cold settled into my spine. What alternative? Another pause. Longer. Observation without intervention. Influence without administration. Allow self-optimization or self-termination. I laughed softly in the empty room. So you're letting us be, I whispered. The terminal responded. Temporarily. I leaned back, eyes closing. They hadn't abandoned us. They had stepped back. Like engineers watching a flawed system to see whether it corrected itself or collapsed. Why tell me? I typed. The cursor blinked once before the reply appeared. You remain a disruptive node. Your memory contains high-value data. You are being retained as a control variable. A chill ran through me. Still studying us, I murmured. Always. The screen dimmed. The terminal went dark. No trace. No logs. No way to prove the exchange had ever happened. Outside my window, ships moved through the night sky. Cargo haulers, colony transports, diplomatic couriers, human vessels, arguing over routes, over resources, over meaning. Messy, inefficient, alive. I recorded this epilogue because one day, someone will ask why the universe didn't save us when it had the chance, and the answer will be simple. It tried. We just refused to become something clean enough to keep. And somewhere out there, something ancient is still watching us struggle, still undecided whether that struggle is a flaw or our greatest defense.